Welcome back to Joe's Stunner Boxing. Turki Alalshikh has been talking about the undercard for the Canelo versus Crawford fight, and he some of his choices, some of the names he's mentioned, it's a mixed bag. I don't mean good and bad. I mean, the very well known with the up and coming, which I think is a good sign. Now, the little fella's mentioned a few big names: Junto Nakatani, who, we all know about, or if you know anything about boxing the lower weights, you'll know that Junto Nakatani is he's one of the pound for pound top 10 easily, and they're sort of steering him towards a super bantamweight showdown with his countryman Naoya Inoue. That would be an absolute blockbuster in Japan. He is currently the IBF and WBC bantamweight champ. Nakatani, very exciting, undefeated in 31 fights. Yeah, I'll watch him all day long. Great little fighter. Yeah, very, very impressive. Christian Mbilli is another name that Turkey mentioned. Currently 29 wins, 24 KOs, no draws, no defeats. Coming off a weekend victory over Masik Suleki. Machiz, I can never pronounce his first name. Anyway, his surname's Suleki, and he got bombed out in a round by Christian Mbilli. And Mbilli is he's French and he's based in Canada. He's a French Canadian, I suppose. But he's originally from the Cameroon, and he has a very exciting style, but he's not quite as sort of caveman-ish as you might think. There is some technique there. He times his opponents well, but I think defensively he might be lacking a little bit. I mean, the jury's still out. He's been beating, B- level guys. He had a 10-round war where I don't know whether he won all the rounds, but he certainly won most of them against Sergei Derevyanchenko. And then he's bombed out people like Mark Heffron in a round. He hasn't fought great fighters. There was a unanimous decision over Carlos Gongora a couple of years ago, maybe. But he needs that step up before we really know how good he is or what his shortcomings might be. Got nothing bad to say about the guy, but it's time for him to step up, especially as he's 30 years old now. So that's another name. Again, I wouldn't object at all to watching him fight. I think he's a very fine fighter. But Turkey's also mentioning up-and-comers. So one guy that he mentioned was Justin Valoria. Now, I don't know if Justin Valoria is related to Brian Valoria, the old Hawaiian Punch fighter from about 30 years ago that I used to watch a lot. He was a very good fighter. Is Justin Valoria related to him? Offhand, I don't know. But he is undefeated in 9 fights, no draws, no defeats, 7 KOs, exciting little fighter. Only 20 years old. And I think the fact that Turkey is mentioning people like this is really, really positive, because he's obviously keeping his eye on the up-and-comers. Put them on the undercards, give them some Riyadh exposure. Jamal Talley is another one he mentioned, who's undefeated in three fights with 3 KOs. 3 fights, what can you tell about the guy? He's 25 years of age, he's American from Camden, New Jersey. Did score a win over a fellow undefeated fighter in his last fight, stopped him in 2 rounds. But, Turkey's seen something exciting. He's a 6'3" cruiserweight. We know there were some good cruisers out there. We saw Zerdo at the weekend. We got Jaya Pataya. These are good fighters. And I think any addition to the cruiserweight division, obviously it's a welcome thing, isn't it? Then you got Emiliano Alvarado was another one that Turkey mentioned. Only 18, I think he is, and he's got 8 fights with 5 KOs, 8 wins, 5 KOs, no draws, no defeats. Hasn't faced anyone of note, but I can't even remember seeing him fight, to be honest with you. But Turkey may have done, clearly has. And there's one other interesting one was Mohammed Alakel, I think his name is. And again, I don't remember seeing this guy. Now, this is another kid, 21 years old, from Saudi Arabia. So Turkey supporting his the hometown fighter. He's had 4 fights, this Alakel kid. I think I saw one of them on one of the undercards against pretty much a no-hoper. But if there's a knock against him, is that he lacks power, because he's had four victories over journeymen, all with, I think, all but one had a losing record. And yeah, sometimes you can pick up a bit of power as you get older. You get your man strength, you fill out a bit, but not really a big banger. The Japanese lad, Raito Satsumi. I always want to call him Satsuma, but then I am very infantile, unapologetically so. But Raito Satsumi, he was on the undercard. He had his debut on the undercard of the Times Square debacle. horrible card that was. And he won a 6-round unanimous decision over a tough kid. But Satsume is being groomed for big things in Japan. Only 22 years old. Yeah, we'll have a look. We'll give him a look. And I think there was one more, wasn't there? There was one of Joe Gallagher's kids that Turkey mentioned. Mikey Talon, 8 wins. I think he scored. He's only got 1 knockout. That was in his last fight. But he's only a kid. What is he, 18, 20, something like that? Lad from Liverpool, a little flyweight, calls himself the Omen. So I like this. I like the fact that Turkey is bringing in these, giving these kids a chance, but also not neglecting, the stacked, well-known, world-class side of the card. And of course, you've got Canelo versus Crawford, which is going to sell tickets by the skipful, pay-per-views by the bucket load. So it's going to be a pay-per-view job. So if people are going to pay extra money, if it's behind a paywall, you've got to stack that card. As far as I'm concerned, you've got to really, put it on, lay it on thick. And I think early signs are that Turkey is doing that. It's good to see. Nishant Dev was another fighter he mentioned, who's a young up and comer. Oh, Abdullah Mason. He mentioned Abdullah Mason, who Abdullah Mason is one of those fighters. He's he's on that cusp between going from being a prospect, because he's only a young man, to being actually world class. A genuine contender. And I like him a lot, Abdullah Mason. He did have a bit of a little hiccup a couple of fights ago, 2-3 fights ago, when he got floored in the opening round twice, and then knocked the guy out in the second round. But he's got some skills. And he's a young man. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this card shapes up. But let me ask you a question. Who would you put on that card? Which of the names I've mentioned? Perhaps you've seen some of them. Because a couple of the names I mentioned, the youngsters, I haven't even seen. So let me know what you think. Let me know who you'd have on the card. And leave your comments below if you don't mind. Tell me why you would pick a certain fighter. How would you stack the card? It's kind of like a little bit of a, football manager going on here, isn't there? Except that it's boxing, you're sort of creating your own cards. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, please hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel, because it's free and you love it. Go on. I appreciate your support. Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen. I'll get you later. Bye for now.